What is an ijazah? I have here مقدمة ابن الصلاح في علوم الحديث, a very famous book in the science of hadith, and he is going to tell us what an ijazah is. He mentions an ijazah, he mentions يعني نعم, he mentions 7 types of ijazah. He mentions 7 different types. And the concept is one. An ijazah comes from the word al-jawaz. Jawaz يعني permissibility. So what I am doing is, the Shaykh gives me an ijazah to narrate his narrations. So the Shaykh will say, wa alaikum as-salam, the Shaykh will say, I give you permission to narrate my narrations. So now I have an ijazah, but I didn't hear the narrations from him. I just have an ijazah to narrate them. So let's mention the different types of ijazah. Does everybody understand the concept? Naam. Al-ijazah. He says the first one, أن يجيز لمعين في معين. He said the first type of ijazah is that the Shaykh gives an allowance to narrate specific things to a specific person. So for example, like he gives an example, he says, أجزت لك الكتاب الفلاني أو ما اشتملت عليه فهرستي هذه مثلا. So the Shaykh will say, for example, to his student, he will say, or it doesn't have to be his student, he will say, I give you an ijazah to narrate this particular book from me. Now, let's say I have 5 books. I say, this particular one you can narrate from me. He says the second type of ijazah, أن يجيز لمعين في غير معين, that he gives this ijazah to a specific person in something that is general. So I say, all of my works, I give you an ijazah to narrate them. طيب? Because why is the ijazah? You didn't hear them from me. So you can't go and say, حدثني Ali. You can't do that because you didn't hear them from me. But what happens is, if I say, I give you an ijazah to narrate my 5 books, then what happens now is you will go and you will say, on the authority of Ali, ijazatan. So you didn't hear them from me, but you took them what? By way of ijazah. This is a permissible way to narrate hadith. But it is a weaker way to narrate hadith. It is a weak way. There are stronger ways to narrate hadith, and that is to hear it directly from me. For me to directly tell you. Naam. And the scholars of hadith are so precise that if one of them gets kicked out of a circle, they'll sit outside and listen. Naam. And whatever they hear the Shaykh narrating, they'll write it down, but they're not allowed to sit in the Shaykh's circle. So they'll go and they'll say, I heard him say from outside, or from behind the door, or whatever. Naam. And this is permissible, as long as the person is trustworthy. طيب. So once you hear the narration from me, everybody has a right who hears the narration from me to narrate it. But if you didn't hear it from me, I have to give you permission to narrate my narrations. Does everybody understand? This is what an ijazah is. This is what an ijazah is. So until today, till this day, we have chains of narration going back to the Prophet ﷺ. But the chains of narration are all going to go through a mother book. Yani around the 3rd century after Hijrah, the chains of narration that go directly from an individual to the Prophet ﷺ ended. And after that, everybody who wants to go to the Prophet ﷺ, they have to go through one of these books, like Sahih al-Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, the 4 Sunan, and so forth. So if you read like al-Bayhaqi, for example, Sunan al-Bayhaqi, he goes through Mustadrak al-Hakim, or he will go through other books. Ibn Hazm, al-Zahiri in his book Al-Muhalla. When you open the book Al-Muhalla, he narrates the narrations with chains of narration. And you see this long narration with 10 people in it. حدثنا, حدثنا, حدثنا. And you're thinking, what is this chain of narration? And then as you read, you see, حدثنا Muslim. Who's Muslim? Muslim ibn Hajjaj. Yani the narration is where? In Sahih Muslim. Naam. So he is going through a book. So after the 3rd century after Hijrah, around then, loosely saying, the chains of narration that go directly to the Prophet ﷺ stopped. And they were put in books, and now when you want to go to the Prophet ﷺ, you have to go through one of these books. So the ijazah that I received today is going to go back really to who? Al-Imam al-Bukhari. So it's really an ijazah of Sahih al-Bukhari. Naam? طيب. In this chain of narration that goes back to Sahih al-Bukhari, we don't have the same condition that we have in the chains of narration that go from Bukhari to the Prophet ﷺ. In the chain of narration from Imam al-Bukhari to the Prophet ﷺ, everyone has to be trustworthy and everyone has to have a good memory. Naam, or يعني Sahih al-Kitab. We're not going to write a book here. We are using loosely terminologies. So everyone has to be good, or else we will not accept the hadith. But from Bukhari, once the book was written, and I narrate my chain of narration going back to al-Bukhari, it could be a liar from a liar, from a liar, who got it from a liar, who got it from a liar. It doesn't matter. As long as Sahih al-Bukhari is authentically ascribed to Imam al-Bukhari, the book is sound. Khalas. And the chain of narration now is just kind of, the chain of narration is something Allah has given this ummah that He hasn't given any other ummah before us. And it is an honor. So they keep the chain of narration going. And you can go and get chains of narration and collect ijazat. So now we know what is an ijazah, correct? Now let me ask you a question to make sure you understood and everybody understood. If I have an ijazah from Brother Edu, which I don't, this is just an example. If I have an ijazah from Brother Edu to narrate Sahih al-Bukhari from him, through his chain of narration, does that mean that I have read Sahih al-Bukhari? La. It does not mean I have read Sahih al-Bukhari. It means that I have been given permission by Edu to say, حدثنا Edu ijazatan. حدثه so and so, his sheikh, ijazatan. All the way back to Imam al-Bukhari. So if I say, I have an ijazah, does it mean I've read the book? La. So does an ijazah then indicate any knowledge I possess? La. Because it doesn't even mean that I read the book. It just means that I met Edu. At most, what it means is that I met Edu and he gave me this permission. That's all it means. Does everybody understand? Let me give you an example. Al-Sheikh Uthman al-Salimi, I'll show you how ijazat work today, in the day we live in. Al-Sheikh Uthman al-Salimi, hafidhahullah, who we're going to hear in a few minutes, inshallah. I have known this sheikh for about between 4 and 5 years. And I have called him countless times and have hours and hours of time on the phone with him, answering questions and so forth. طيب. So I have never met Sheikh Uthman al-Salimi a day in my life. I never met him. But I know him very well, and he knows me very well. How? On the phone. But I didn't meet him. Al-Sheikh Uthman al-Salimi gave me an ijazah in his books to translate them. He said, translate any of my books that the people will benefit from. طيب. This is stronger than an ijazah or not? The answer is na'am, because not only am I narrating the books, but I am translating them to another language. And you don't translate the wordings, you actually translate what? The meanings. And when I translate the Quran, I'm not translating the meaning, the word for word. I'm translating what? The meanings of the Quran. So Sheikh Uthman is saying, you have permission to translate any of my books. So not only am I have permission to narrate them and say Sheikh Uthman gave me ijazah in his books, la. On top of that, to translate them too, to basically explain them to the people. Naam, to translate them, put them in a different language. Naam. طيب. I have 3 of his books in my library at home. His work on Kitab al-Tawheed for Ibn Manda, his work on Sahih al-Musnad bin Asbab al-Nuzul for Sheikh Muqbil, and his work on, he compiled some narrations that Sheikh al-Albani and Sheikh Muqbil agreed on authentication. These are 3 books of his that I have. I haven't read all of them. Naam, I've read parts of them and I go through them and I refer to them and so on and so forth when needed, but I didn't read all of them, let alone translate it. So he has given me this permission, but it doesn't even mean that I what? Read them. طيب. الشيخ يحيى الحجوري والشيخ محمد الإمام حفظهم الله طيب have given written permission with their handwriting, actually Sheikh Yahya's son, with written permission to a dear friend of mine from New York, Abu Dujana, and I had Abu Dujana collect these papers from these mashayikh when he was in Yemen to give me permission to translate any of their books. Naam. So Abu Dujana came back having the permission and gave me the permission to translate these books based on the conditions the mashayikh put, and so forth. And I've never met the Sheikh Yahya al-Hajuri, I've never met the Sheikh Muhammad al-Imam. If Sheikh Muhammad al-Imam I've spoken to probably 2 or 3 times on the phone, and the Sheikh Yahya al-Hajuri I can't even remember a time when I spoke directly to. Naam. So al-Ijazah ya akhwani fillah does not testify knowledge, and it doesn't even mean that you have read, let alone memorize what you have been given an ijazah in. Let's take an example from a Sheikh al-Albani. A Sheikh al-Albani has ijazat, chains of narration. This is the words of Sheikh Rabi' in Majmu' Fatawa Sheikh Rabi' Hafidhahullah Ta'ala, speaking about briefly the biography of Sheikh al-Albani Rahimahullah Ta'ala. يقول الشيخ ربيع: وعندما رأى مؤرخ حلب ومحدثها الشيخ محمد راغب الطباخ نبوغ الفتى الشيخ الألباني وإقباله على العلم أجازه بمروياته، وهي مذكورة في ثبته الأنوار الجلية في مختصر الأثبات الحلبية. وليس من الأسرار أن الشيخ رحمه الله كان يقول عن هذه الإجازة: هي لا تعني لي شيئا، وإنما نرد بها فقط على الحاقدين. Sheikh al-Albani rahimahullah came in contact with a man who was the historian and muhaddith of a place called Halab. His name was Muhammad Raghib al-Tabbakh rahimahullah. When he met a Sheikh al-Albani, and a Sheikh al-Albani, if you listen to a Sheikh al-Albani's tapes, there is a section in his tapes that is his life story, his spoken biography, that was recorded by a Sheikh Abu Ishaq al-Huwaini in Egypt. In it, he asks him about this occurrence that occurred. So Sheikh al-Albani goes into how he came about receiving these ijazat. First of all, Sheikh al-Albani didn't study with al-Tabbakh. طيب. Second of all, Sheikh Muhammad Raghib al-Tabbakh, he heard about Sheikh al-Albani and he met him. And when he saw Shaykh al-Albani was very intelligent and very keen and guardful and mindful of the science of hadith and so forth, he said, I want to give this young man, he was a young man at the time, I want to give him an ijazah in my narrations. So he sat down and he gave Shaykh al-Albani the book, and Shaykh al-Albani read some of the narrations as Shaykh al-Albani said himself. You can go and listen to that tape. He read some of the book to him, and then he wrote him an ijazah. That he has an ijazah from me to narrate all of my narrations. Naam. Shaykh al-Albani comments on this ijazah, and he says, this ijazah doesn't mean anything to me. It does not mean anything to me. The only thing I use this ijazah for is just to defend myself in front of those who have a problem with me, because they'll say, Shaykh al-Albani, he's the big muhaddith and he doesn't even have an ijazah. So he'll say, "La, I have an ijazah and here's the ijazah." Now, so an ijazah does not mean that you have knowledge. An ijazah means at most that you have met the Shaykh. And maybe not even met the Shaykh, because I have given you a story of myself with the Shaykh Uthman, allowing me to translate his books. I've never met a Shaykh Uthman. I have no idea what he looks like, and he has no clue what I look like. Naam. So, ya akhwani fillah, this is a very important thing to know.